Welcome to another episode of Through the Glass. Appreciate you joining us. Today on the show, I have Steve Honoshowsky, artist, musician, songwriter, producer, drummer, bassist, keyboardist, teacher. He does many things. You may have seen him on stage in a town near you in his band Daughter Vision. And we're also going to be talking about a new release from Gematria, his other project with Ray Suhy. Shout out to Ray. What's up, dude?
How's it going?
Steve, how are you?
Marvelous. How are you?
I'm good, man.
I'm excited to be here.
You hit me up
Yes.
about coming on the show, and I feel honored.
Well, thank you.
And so I appreciate you reaching out to me, and in particular with your release coming up, Gematria with Ray Suhy. Can you just tell us a little bit about Gematria?
Sure. This is our second release that's going to be coming out in September. We did an EP years back, and we were introduced here at Lake House through mutual friends, but I was a fan of Ray's before that. He had played in the band East of the Wall. He plays in 6 Feet Under, and he does, he plays jazz with Lewis Porter, but I'd first seen him with East of the Wall and was already a fan of Ray, and we both really wanted to work together.
He's one of those interesting guys. Like, he's respected in the jazz realm, and he's respected in like the death metal.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I know there's a lot of different genres of metal. I'm just throwing death metal out there.
Sure. Yeah.
He's got the chops in both those worlds,
which is awesome.
And Gematria is neither one of those things.
No, but like metal publications are promoting this, and because he's in that world, but it's a hard thing to categorize genre wise, but
you guys described yourselves as a progressive industrial duo on your press release.
Yes.
Which I read and I quoted. You looked at me like maybe I said that wrong. I'm like, that was quoted from the press release. Oh wait, no, I said it wrong. Progressive instrumental. Dude, was that what I said the first time?
Sure. Yeah, I mean progressive. I don't like to use that word. I don't know. It's got that. Whenever you say that, there's a little bit of pretension to it. Even though I love prog rock and all that. I don't like to say that, but sure, we'll call it that.
You kind of have to embrace some of the pretension in progressive music, right?
Yes. Well, I don't know. The prog for prog's sake thing is not really something I'm into. There's bands that do that I'm not really that into. But
what do you mean by prog for prog's
sake?
Like, it's too mathy?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Like it's just kind of I get that feeling that was the intention when I'm listening to it, or it feels like it's contrived, or like I don't want to name drop prog bands that I don't like, but like it doesn't have the same spirit as like something from the 70s from like the British progressive rock era. It's more of like a technical thing, or like a.
So you draw the line at like how much groove and feel is infused in it. Is that correct?
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. The song should come first. Maybe. I don't know. It's like if it's not moving me and it just sounds like a lot of technical wizardry with no heart, then I kind of check out. And that's a hard thing to define, but you first hear it, and if it sounds like that, it's like, I know it's subjective, but
I know what you mean.
You know what I'm trying to say?
I do. Well, it is subjective. That's true. And the word progressive music or progressive rock or prog, it has all sorts of stigma attached to it, and people throw that stigma around all different eras.
Right.
So you're influenced from the British stuff of the 70s?
Yeah, but there's new stuff too. So like my students sometimes will play me math rock bands, and like it's amazing what they're doing. But like I'm not going to go home and listen to it. Like it's I'm not dissing it. It's just a lot of like and I check out. It's a hard thing to explain, but it's just like I lose interest.
Jazz does that to a lot of people.
Jazz does
They just check the hell out.
Yes.
Depending on the style.
Have you ever seen that Stand Up for Drummers, Fred Armistead? I think it's on Netflix, where he's talking to an audience of drummers, and he plays a jazz track.
Steve, I did not like that well, that show. What
Right.
I didn't care for it.
But when he played the jazz track and he's like, raise your hand when you lose the melody.
Oh,
That's what I'm referring to.
yeah.
Yeah. That thing.
Who are you referring to when you say the British in the 70s? Are we talking Genesis?
Love Genesis, love King Crimson. The first concert I went to that wasn't like a local concert was when like Emerson, Lake and Palmer reunited the first time. I saw them at Radio City when I was like turning 13. Yes. And then you get deeper into like the Gentle Giants and the Happy the Man and, UK and then, all the other offshoots. But I think probably King Crimson was my favorite of that era.
They get a lot of respect.
Yeah.
We were talking about Tool.
Yes.
Earlier. Haven't they?
They've toured together,
sort of partnered with those guys in some way, and they've tried to bring them back into the limelight. Am I saying that all right?
I know they've done West Coast tours together and have played together. I know like Danny, played on Red with them and stuff, so like I know there's a lot of
Danny Carey, the drummer of Tool.
Yeah.
So when I was coming up as a musician, I didn't know anyone who was playing anything prog or anything around it. It was like folky, or it was like hardcore or metal.
Yeah.
Was there a lot of support when you were coming up? And where were you coming up as a musician? Are you born around here? I don't know.
I'm from Somerset County.
I don't know your origin story.
I'm from Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Do you know where that is?
I do. Northwest of here.
Yeah. Okay.
So, beautiful up there. It's a really beautiful area.
It is. When I was living there, I was very critical of it, but now looking back, it was a pretty safe, happy place to live. But no, there weren't like progressive. There were bands, and we're talking like Battle of the Bands and your local fundraiser shows and stuff. But none that I could. Well, there was a band called Clownhammer, that was pretty awesome. That kind of did some of that style. But the guitar player, my friend who lived right up the street, we both discovered our instruments at the same time. My friend Jay Source, shout out to Jay Source. We had like we discovered our instruments and had like parallel paths, like, and we both loved that music along with other music. We had metal phases and, we were discovering a lot of the same music at the same time. So. And
when you guys were hooking up, was it trying to copy the bands you liked, or were you trying to write your own music? Trying
to write our own music. I mean, there was definitely some stealing, from stuff, and you can hear it on some of those, demos I have. It's like that's a Bill Bruford fill right there. That's Crimson there. That's Genesis. You could hear that stuff, but
I mean, who's coming out of the womb with original ideas? I mean, maybe there's a handful of geniuses in the history of art.
It's usually people who aren't listening to anything who come out with that stuff, with
that's
real
a good
original
point.
Stuff. Yeah.
But most people you gotta love something and then copy it, and then most people don't leave the copy stage.
Well, yeah. In the beginning, it was a lot of stealing. It was a lot of stealing licks. Sure. I mean, that's how you learn. It's like.
Oh yeah, 100%.
There's the Neil Peart fill. There's the Phil Collins fill. There's this fill. There's the Stuart Copeland. There's the you hear it all.
Phil, I have a lot of Phil Collins love. So as a prog guy, do you hate on Phil Collins?
No,
because some people feel that he ultimately destroyed Genesis.
No, not at all.
Because there's a lot of Phil Collins hate.
I love Peter Gabriel and Phil Collins equally, but. Phil's drumming on like the Brand X stuff and the Brian Eno stuff, like he's awesome.
He is awesome.
Yeah, so tremendous influence for sure.
Have you read his memoir?
I have not.
Are you a reader?
I used to be more of a read. I don't have a lot of time to read these days, but I want to read more. But
that's what everybody says.
That's what everybody says. But believe it or not, I used to read more.
Well, his memoir, all of you out there in the internet. What's it called? Not Dead Yet.
Okay, yeah.
It's awesome. It's one of the best I guess, musical memoirs. I haven't read a ton of them, but that one was great. I'm a big fan of his, man. I liked all that like cheesy shit in the 80s.
So did I.
Like the melody. Like I learned so much melody, even if it was like surrounded in some cheese and people were like making fun of it. I'm like, I don't know. That melody's perfect. And then the grooves.
The grooves. And also the sound of his drums. You know, that like reverse gate drum sound. That like,
it gets into it in depth
yes.
in the book, sort of his sound.
Which wasn't that on a Peter Gabriel record that first accidentally happened and then that became his sound, the third Gabriel record?
Ooh, I don't remember the context. Yeah. I don't want to misquote the book.
Right on. Yeah, but I think it was like they were recording that. He didn't want cymbals on his album. They were recording the drums and I think it was the playback through the control room heard that like reverse gate sound. And
yes, through the talkback mic.
Yeah.
That's exactly. I remember that aspect of the
awesome
the anecdote. Yeah, Phil Collins. Phil, I love you, man. I've always loved you. And speaking of Phil Collins, and we were talking about the Prudential Center earlier. That was the other concert I've seen at the Prudential Center. My wife surprised me, got me some Phil Collins tickets.
Nice.
You know.
Yeah.
It was good. He could barely get out there. He was fucking...
Was he, this is where he's like sitting in a chair?
Yeah, he came out with some support, sat in a chair, basically said, hey, I'm sorry. I might get inspired at some point and get up and rock out a little bit, but this might be the posture for the show. I didn't care. I'm like, dude, what do you have to prove? Like, as long as you're not out there phoning it in.
Right.
Other than that, respect. Was it easy to find players who wanted to play music that was sort of outside the pop?
That was a lot easier. That was a lot easier when I moved down here. It was more open down here, and there was so many more musicians, and that's what drove me down here, I think, ultimately.
When did you move down to this area? So we're in Basking Ridge.
14, 15 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And where to? Where are you at?
I'm in Highlands, New Jersey.
Okay, right. Yeah, I mean, compared to Basking Ridge, I assume Asbury Park is... I mean, it's got a deep pool compared to any town.
Yes.
There are more like propped up music cities in the country and in the world, but as far as just like a solid amount of talented people, and like even the bands that aren't that great are still like pretty good.
Yeah.
Like the bar is high. I noticed that when I was grinding a lot and bands would come in from out of town and they felt like they had to like step up their game. Or the opposite, they came in cocky and then, you know, the two opening local acts that got the call 2 minutes before, like smoked them.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, oh, right, I'm in Asbury Park. There's no phoning it in. And I just always loved that about this town and about all the players.
Me too.
What instruments drew you first? You're a multi-instrumentalist. So you play just about everything.
I'm not very good at the guitar, but I have one. I get a weird look when I say this sometimes, but the tape recorder was like the first thing I think I experimented with. That was like number one. So
how so?
Just making weird recordings and just playing with it. We had two like realistic tape recorders in the house, and like, you know, just experimenting with the different speeds and, you know, just recording ridiculous stuff from my father singing in the shower to like whatever sounds that were, you know, putting a toy and a power tool together, and like, you know, my friend Jay up the street making weird tapes, and some of them very silly. But that was probably the first thing that I played around with, was like cassette tapes. And
then just because if I'm hearing you right, I was doing the same thing. So you'd have two cassette players and you just keep bounce, and add, and it usually just kept getting worse.
Right.
But it was fun as hell.
Right.
That's what I did.
And that's like multi-tracking, right?
That is analog multi-tracking for all you younger folks out there. Very fancy stuff. Yeah, we probably had the realistic. Yeah, the handle slid out a little bit.
You know the one. That's exactly it.
But there was only one. I think there was one cassette player.
Right.
For 20 years.
It was like we had a black one and a gray one. You know, that was yeah. So
yeah, I used to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Just record on one, go to the other. Bap, 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 and build.
My brother had a Siel, Siel keyboard, and I played with that. That was like the next thing. But like, we had a neighbor who had a baby grand piano, and she used to watch me, like as you know, she used to babysit me, and like she used to let me pound on that thing. So like, you know, that's the first interactions with like a real instrument was probably the keyboard and the piano.
Who was musical around you?
My two brothers, clarinet players, but my brother Dan also played the bassoon. And you know, there's a 5-year gap there, so we shared a room. I'd hear them practicing all the time. My parents aren't really music. Well, my dad would burst into song all the time, and it was very amusing. But other than that, like, you know, they didn't really play anything. So my first experiences are kind of watching the brothers play the public school concert band and marching band and jazz band, and you know, just concerts at the local level.
Was that inspiring, or was it like, I don't want to do that?
Well,
I want to do something cool.
The
that kind of feeling about school band and all that.
Right. The way the drums came in was like, you know, my mom was be like, "What instrument are you going to play in the band?" You know, and to me, the only thing interesting going on was in the back, the drummers. You know, it's like hitting stuff. But the light bulb really didn't go on for the drums until I'm dating myself now. But when we got cable television. And it was a big deal because like not everybody on the block had this, and we didn't have a lot of money. So I was like amazed that we were getting this, and I think we were getting it for sports. But I was very excited about this music television, playing the videos 24/7. But I saw Stuart Copeland on MTV, and that's when I was like, I want to do that.
Stuart Copeland of The Police,
yes,
and probably countless sessions,
yes,
as well. He's a nasty player.
Yeah,
The Police.
Right. And it was that
so special.
If you remember, MTV would play concerts on the weekend. So it was like they showed the Shea Stadium show, and then like right after that was, I don't know if you ever seen that documentary A Music War.
No,
that's
what's
like
that
it's
about?
Like IRS Records made this, like it was like 3 or 4 concerts in different parts of the world, and they just play like one song from each artist. And this is like you know, the post-punk. You know, so it's like it opens with the Police doing "Driven to Tears," and then it's like Toya, Devo, X, Gary Newman, Magazine, Gang of Four, XTC, like early Joan Jett, first Go-Go's with their old bass player, Klaus Nomi, like all, you know, just blew my mind. But that "Driven to Tears" was when I saw that performance, I was like, yeah, Stuart Copeland. That's when the light bulb went off. And
you wanted to play drums?
Yeah.
How'd you get started with drums? Were you allowed to get a kit? I wasn't allowed to get a kit in my house. Like, oh, no.
No, that's a funny story. My parents, I don't think were going to get me drums. So my friend Shay was selling his drum set when he was moving, and I bought it for $100, and just we put it in the house when my dad wasn't home. And then like one day he saw him, and then the deal was like, you know, I get home from work, you know, he was like, I get home from work at 4:30. You have the time from when you get home from school till when I get home to play those drums, because he was like demolition guy. That was like his job, and he didn't want to hear loud noise when he came home. So that was like my window of time to practice. But that's how we got the drums. My first drum teacher, Mark Kafer, best drum teacher a kid could have. He's really the one who set me off. And this is like middle school. So like he was in my brother's grade, so there's like a 5-year gap, and I'm getting kind of groomed to be in the high school drum line. So I got recruited in as an 8th grader on snare drum. So, you know, drum lessons were first on the pad, you know, for the first half, then on the kit, and he had like an amazing Tama kit with, you know, pristine cymbals, and it was tuned like immaculately, and it was awesome. And like just, you know, the stuff he taught me and just watching him, that's the first time I've seen like the independence and the 4-way coordination really, you know, I was completely unaware of the possibilities of what could be done on the drum kit until I started taking lessons with him. But that was, and you know, he took me to my first Modern Drummer Festival, which was like Louis Belson and Terry Bozzio were like the headlining, so like as a 12-year-old, it was.
Terry Bozzio is
Oh my
nuts.
God. I knew nothing of this guy except for Missing Persons and the posters he had in the basement with the hair. And then just like when he came out, oh my God, I was just blown away.
Is he going to play all those drums?
Right.
Is that just one kit? How do you get into the kit? Or do you just have to rappel down into the kit?
Did you go to the Saint when he did his thing there?
No.
He used up every channel on the board, but I mean, like, it was fascinating.
When was this?
Maybe 10 years ago or
a
little less. But it was really cool because he was not only playing his solo compositions, but telling stories about them, and everything from being on the road with Frank and his career and up to present day.
Oh man, that's a geek paradise.
Oh yeah, totally.
Were you like right up?
Yes.
Terry. It's me, Steve.
Have you ever seen that US Festival Missing Persons concert that it's on you? I mean, with the full rototom. I love that.
That's not really a thing right now.
No.
I mean, a lot of acoustic instruments are not a thing at the moment.
No.
But drums in particular, like how have you seen drum use and drum acceptance and drum placement in music sort of evolve? That's
tough. Like when I hear a recording, I can't hear the difference not necessarily between like a maple and a brass and a this and a that. But, like some of my students now have these like epic drum kits, like right out of the chute, so like I started on a little 4-piece and kept accessorizing, over time. So, I have the octobans, I have the rototoms, I even got the wind chime, like everything, but the technology, I guess I hear more in the electronic drums because those have really advanced. But like the acoustic drums are still pretty much the acoustic drums, There's a lot of cool new cymbal effects and effect symbols and stacks and, different metal that they put in it. And,
but a drum has been a drum.
Right, exactly.
Since since stretching some African animal skin over a
exactly
husk of something. You mentioned before, independence, 4-way independence for drumming, and for those who not hip to what that is, or those who are not drummers, that's usually the first thing that hits someone and they say, oh, I can't drum. That's the first wall. And what that is, well, I'll have you explain. You're the drummer. Well, what is independence? And as a drum teacher, why is that like the first major wall? And some people can't get past it.
And that's okay. Like there's there's a lot of power in just playing one drum or, playing a simple, groove. But I think when you branch into the different styles, it demands more. Certainly jazz and Latin and all the various, other styles from other countries require, because so much of that music is played as a group of drummers, and now you're playing it on a drum kit, and this limb has to play this, and this limb has to play this opposing rhythm, and the bass has to be here, and the hi-hat has to be here. So all 4 limbs are going, but then it's also like, how can I be expressive in that type of setting too? Like, how can I keep these going and then maybe improvise with this one against, it gets to be 2 brains, So
I was going to say, what's going on in the brain that shorts people out?
Well, I feel the same way when I look at a pipe organist, and it's like there's bass pedals and there's 4 tiers of keyboards and they're pulling valves and they flipping sheets of music. It's like, it might be like intimidating, but I find if you don't think about it so much, it's easier, and that's just how my nervous system works. But everyone's wired differently, so it might be just kind of too much for some people, But then you just kind of just creep it in. And if I'm teaching a lesson and that student's not interested in playing Latin stuff, I'll just kind of sneak it in, just like, try this, and it's just like, what you're actually doing is a samba, it's like you're actually, and it's a little trick, it's like,
What's like a simple exercise for, because I see this all the time. People are just like, oh, I can't drum. Like, how do you move? It's the, what is it? Rubbing your tummy, patting your head thing.
Right.
It's that kind of thing. What's like a simple thing, trick, exercise, or move that like someone could try in real time and begin to test those muscles?
I think if you like can, and this might sound very basic, but if you can walk in place, right, left, and then like play or clap something and get your whole body going, that makes it, I think, a lot easier when you sit down at the drum set. Because, like
can you tap it out? Let's
sure.
Let's get a little instructional.
So
you can
like,
get up if you have to.
Okay.
You can't move the camera,
right.
But you can get up.
So like if I'm just moving my right and left foot and I can, like do that rhythm and talk to you at the same time and not think about what I'm doing. Now the steps it takes to get there is maybe you do it with a recording, but I find it easier when you do it with somebody else. The huge part of a lesson is playing with another person, so like it becomes, synergy. It's like you're moving with that person, and you're just kind of mirroring them. And then it becomes like, this like communal thing. It's it's even easier with a group of people, so like that's a good approach for coordination. Like all day long we're doing multiple things and you're not thinking about it, so it's like if you just let go of that when you're and not be so fixated, and it's easier with the kids. So like the adult brain gets super analytical. It's just like, wait, is this on the 4? Is this on the E? Like, where am I supposed to play this? The kids just go for it. They're not suspended in that analytical, like I have to concentrate on this thing. They just try. They just run at it.
That's the beauty of youth and children. They don't have the hang-ups, mostly don't have the fears, and don't have the programming.
Right.
Like, we get more programmed. That part of the brain, what is it called? The default mode network. That area of the brain for children, it's still pretty loose in there. It's not so rigid. Yeah, children learn things so quick.
I know.
I feel like such a dummy. I watch my children learning something, and I'm just like,
yeah. It's hard to keep up.
You're going to have to show me that many times, and I still don't care and probably wouldn't be able to pick it up. But that's the beauty of a child's brain. I mean, it's like that until your late teens or who knows.
Sure.
Well, and you're right. Nothing beats doing things with people. It's good to work alone, and some of the best work, some of the most critical work can come, pounding your head against the desk and working something out. But nothing beats doing something with someone because it becomes more human.
Mm-hmm.
It allows you to connect and create, I think you used the word, a symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
It's kind of what all things are about. I mean, COVID taught us, most of us at least, like, damn, being with people is a good thing.
Yeah, right.
So there's the suffering of a virus and a disease, but there's also the suffering of loneliness. There's the suffering of separation. There's the suffering of lack of physical contact. It's heavy.
Yes.
How did you get hooked up with Ray? Because everything you're describing doesn't remind me of some of the worlds that he's come from.
No.
We mentioned jazz. We mentioned metal and death metal.
Yes.
How does this happen?
Well, that it happens here, at Lake House. Just talking, it's similar interests that we had, but it's also, like I think we're fans of each other, and it just makes it easy to work together. And we both had a vision, about this music we were doing, which is, we don't know what the composition is going to sound like. We're just going to experiment here. And like, we were both attracted to that idea. Like when you work alone on a song, and you try to suspend ego, that becomes like a trap, and then you can like keep yourself up at night in that like feedback loop. But like when you're trying to do the unfamiliar, when you're trying to create unfamiliar music, like, you're trying to reach that thing you haven't heard, or like hit that emotion that hasn't been hit, you look to using something that is uncomfortable, or like a different way of going about it, or to just like try to like unlearn like what you know about something, and do a different approach. And we are both fans of esoteric writings, and what if we tried some of these numerical systems with rhythm and melody? And when you're doing that, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. It's just, you're just kind of just throwing to see what sticks, and you get something going, and it just kind of takes its own evolution. And that's kind of how we come up with the stuff together. Now, the first time we were sharing tracks, so it wasn't so much we were together, but then we started playing together, and that's when I feel it really evolved into what it is now. Because the first EP was kind of done remotely, and a lot of this stuff was done remotely, but we had already been playing. It was only that way because of the pandemic. The first track on this new up and coming new record, we were in the same room together. The rest we were doing, but while we were doing that, we were communicating with each other, and it didn't feel the same way as just sharing tracks. It was more organic.
You mentioned something that I think is worth exploring. You said, we wanted to try arranging and writing music based off of patterns, geometric patterns, number sequences. What the hell are you talking about? Is this witchcraft?
No.
Or is this really music? And can you break it down, please? Because I have a little bit of an understanding of that.
Sure.
We had talked about artists and bands that do it.
Yes, and
Tool.
Let's start there. So like,
break it down for the
we're
people.
not the first to do this, and Tool, the sacred geometry and using numbers and basing a composition off the number 3. How many ways can we play 3, or like how does that fit with a 4? Like and how does that fit rhythmically if I play 3 and 4? How does it fit melodically if I have a 3 note and a 4 note together cycling around? And like the geometry is either the symbol has the points, or the shape has the sides. So like there's like a lot of older drum books, and there's some videos, and where music is broken down into symbols instead of Western notation. So this has been something that's been ancient. Like if you look at a lot of clave stuff, it's not written like on a staff. It's like X's and dots, and the 20th century composers, and I feel like a lot of them experimented because they're not music school people. Maybe they used numerology to like make a melody, or like you can get into the microtonal level. I've been checking out Turkish music, which I think has like 6 tones in between each whole tone. It's like, what is that? Is that even, can you even hear that? But when you see it on paper, it's not on a staff. It's like art. It's like a shape, So there's these very old ways that people would communicate music. And, we're just putting a modern thing to it. So like another band I think I've talked to you about is Killing Joke. They've used this number system, particularly with BPMs. So like, if I write a word on a piece of paper, and the letters of the word have a number to it. So like the alphabet and the number system go together, and I make a number pattern based on that word. It's like, how could I take this number pattern and make a melody out of it, or make a rhythm out of it? And that's kind of where it starts there. I know other people have done this. There's a lot of composers. I think John Zorn does this in his music. But there's so many possibilities that are out there.
And this is sort of not the opposite of, but definitely something different from what I'd say most artists do, where you're crafting your melody around a lyric. So like, okay, it's time to change now because I finished that thought.
Right.
And of course, there's the basic forms of 4 and 2
Mm-hmm.
and 8, which get used in popular music wonderfully. And then there's also people who write off of just how a melody feels. Like, oh, this is very satisfying. And then we come up to this note. Yes, let's go there. And then everybody, let's go up. And, this is something totally different.
Yeah.
So as someone who writes this way, I've never written this way. Although I study a little bit of fractal music. You familiar with that?
No.
Letting fractal patterns
Oh, okay.
just run the sequence for you and then seeing what you get.
Sweet.
We can get into that.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing. I'm upset.
That's like more like machine generated.
That's right.
Yeah.
But you make something beautiful in the end.
Totally.
Not unlike how fractal art came about. So now when you see digital landscapes, CGI landscapes of rocks and sand and grass, these things that you really can't draw accurately, you take the tiniest form, you set a fractal pattern on it, let it go a long ways, and you're like, oh, that looks exactly like a real jagged cliff of rock. I don't know why all that works. I think
that's the mystery of it. That's the beauty of it.
That's where, for some, that's where God is. For others, that's where hell is. It's mysterious.
The universe.
It's mysterious for sure. So when you guys were working this way, what was the jumping off point? If you're going to write in a mathematical or geometric way, then what's the impetus? I'm assuming it's not a hook, or maybe it is, and I'm assuming it's not a lyric. You guys are instrumental, so I doubt it's a word, unless it's the title.
It can be a word.
A title, maybe.
Yeah, sure.
So how does it work? Take us through it. Like, hey, I got this.
Yeah. I want to write a song based off of this diagram, this illustration, or this word, or this number. So like each song is a case-by-case basis.
Sure.
But that's usually the catalyst. What does that sound like? Or if you're looking at, the Spindle of Necessity, which this record is named after, is, I think Ray was going off the diagram. And it's just like, how do I apply notes to that? And, I don't want to speak for him, but I mean, sometimes that's just the first idea. Like, what does that sound like? It's like, that spiral? Like if I start on this note and follow it this way, like what's the end result? And, like sometimes when you're experimenting like this, you make crap, but most of the time it's like, oh, that's interesting. Most of the time there's something to work with, and it's, it's never just one thing. I know one of the songs, the first teaser we did, I was just looking at two symbols on top of each other, and I was just kind of meditating on that. And when you're doing that, you kind of start to sort of move and play, just imagine the points of where those symbols kind of converge. And that's when you create this rhythm that you wouldn't normally have otherwise. So that's how one of the tracks was done. And what we did was we made a drum track first based off of that. So I'm just taking like two shapes, and I don't know if you've ever seen those drum videos where they break down a rhythm in symbols or shapes, and then they like kind of let the ball go around it. It's kind of the same thing, but you're doing that.
I haven't seen that.
Mentally. Yeah. So like for some of my students that have trouble playing a samba or a bossa nova, there's a couple videos on YouTube where it's like there's a polygon and then there's a hexagon, and like it kind of counts you in and then it kind of goes around the shape. And what it does is it gives them a visual and they just kind of follow it. And then like, they're playing something they wouldn't otherwise, that they couldn't maybe understand right away written out in Western notation.
That's amazing. So, and folks, I think there might be some, my camera might not be working, which is not such a bad thing. I didn't do all my makeup today, so maybe it's better off.
You look great.
Thank you, Steve. You look great as well. Two great guys complimenting each other.
Thanks.
Had Ray worked this way prior, or was this like hey, I want to try something for the first time with you.
I don't know if I think this was the first time, but I can't say for certain. This is definitely a first time for me working this way.
How did it come to you?
That's a good question. I know he's big into the I Ching, which I'm not. I don't know much about it, but that's like a hexagram system of like lines, and I know he has a way of kind of composing using that system for setting up 6 notes at a time, and then he kind of leaves it. I don't want to speak for him, but I think there's a lot of chance involved with that, and it's a lot of just like hit record and see what happens and go from there. But like when we were first talking about this, it would be like, hey, what if, it's just like, what if this existed? Because other bands and other artists have tried similar things, but what would it be like if the two of us did it? So I think that was the catalyst, I think.
So does Gematria, are all of the songs composed this way? And how does the title, which reminds me of geometry?
Yeah,
I get that. I get that feel from it. But what's sort of the impetus for that? And how does it relate?
It's an alpha numerical system, and it's like and I'm not an expert on it at all, but there's like it's ancient Hebrew. But there's also like a Greek version of it, because alphabets that have also like a letter that also has a number assigned to it, it gives more meaning, like a deeper meaning to a word or a number. So there's a lot of writings on that. And I know that's something that Ray is really into. So I think, when we were talking about it, that was a big part of the conversation, is to incorporate this.
You guys couldn't just make some pop music about a broken heart? You got to be all fucking fancy?
Well, that's another band. The pop, band is another thing. So.
How did you guys... So Nefarious Industries is the label?
Yes.
That's releasing this music. How did you guys get connected with Nefarious Industries, and how did that process work for this release? And I'd love for you to show us some of the packaging, because I know you also did all the artwork.
Yes. Ray is more connected, I think, with, I think he already had releases on Nefarious. So I think he already had an established relationship with them. Okay. And I knew of them through him. There were... years ago, shows that were put on. There was a record store in Westfield, Sound Lab, and I know Nefarious were putting on concerts there of their artists. I think that was my first introduction to Nefarious, and all the bands were great. They were all like...
was it like genre specific?
I mean, obviously more on the heavy side, but no. There was some ambient stuff, and there was some noise stuff, and there was some real intricate stuff, and there were duos and, 4-piece bands and...
so more oddball.
More stuff. Oddball stuff. Electronics certainly is a thing, But this is the package Nefarious has put together for us. And if you look at it this way, this is like kind of almost like this is like my rendering of a Kabbalistic tree of life here. And I made sure to incorporate Ray's I Ching system on there. And I think he's going to do a video explaining that, because I won't explain that for him. But
we may need to link to further explanations of all of this.
But this hexagram is what Ray works off of, which is in the sleeve here. And it's just really cool. And I love the actual vinyl, which is this mercury orange, played at 45 speed for better quality. But yeah, I did this kind of sort of collage style art, and I did this for our first EP, but when I did this one, we didn't digitally clean it up. It's just scanned the way it is. The last one, they touched it up, and this one they were like, let's leave it the way it is to give it that sort of like time-worn look, that like kind of vintage look.
It looks great. How long have you been doing graphic design?
I'm not a graphic design artist. It's in my free time, whatever that is. I don't have a lot of that, but when I do have it, I sometimes like to do art. I took a stab at the last EP and wanted to do a better job on this one. So it kind of lit a fire under me to do this one. But like my first love before I think music was drawing. But when I was a little kid drawing pictures, like people would be like, "That's great," and then like as soon as I started drawing not pleasant things, they were like, "You shouldn't draw those things," and I kind of like left drawing for a little bit. But when in college I took art classes, I was a recreational management major, which means I had a lot of electives. So I took photo classes, art classes, a lot of video production type stuff. I was always into art. So, and it's what I do for fun. I've never showed my art. This is like really some of the first stuff people are seeing. So it's not something that I call myself, I'm not like a graphic artist, but I enjoy doing it. This is like therapy for me.
Well, it's beautiful.
Thanks.
So right now you guys have dropped a single from the new Gematria, and you guys should check this out. I mean, there'll be a link below, but right now you can listen to that single. What was the calculus for choosing which song to release as a single?
Good question.
And I saw your video explaining the drum pattern
okay.
that the song was based off of.
Right.
A lot of thinking with this. We got to think a lot.
I know.
It's good, man. It's good.
That's what we wanted to do. The videos for the song, not the drum video. So like there's going to be 3 singles released first before the album comes out. We chose the Unconquered Sun one first. The video for the song, which Ray had 3 different artists for these videos, I think, either 2 or 3. But when we were looking at the 3 videos, we were like, that's going to be the first one because we just loved what the artist did, which is like kind of a lot of borrowed stuff that's been like tweaked and filtered, but very busy visually, a lot of like geometry going on, and then like we just loved how it fit the music, so we were like that's the first one, and it was hard to pick, but that's how that first one came.
So the video, I mean, I wouldn't say, not unlike your artwork that you drew,
right?
Geometry, it's busy, but it's not chaos.
No, it's very organized.
Yeah, but it's busy. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff was recorded 2 years ago, so I'm relearning it right now. So it's like, what was that? So I have to like almost like reverse engineer, like figure out what I was doing.
I have been there many times where it's like, yeah, do that thing. And it's like, I do not know the first thing about how to do that thing. So I'm going to relearn it, and it's never going to be exactly the same. And
then Ray wanted me to explain it, which was like, which I'm doing my best, but I'm just scratching the surface on this stuff. So I'm learning it in real time. I'm not like an expert. So, to go back and be like, what is that rhythm exactly? Oh yeah, that's like a 5-foot pattern, I had to ask for the individual tracks, of course, to hear what the hi-hat was doing.
Yeah, it's real. Yeah. Sometimes things just come out of a spontaneous thing, and it's great, and you could play it all day, but then 2 years later, it sounds like, someone else played that. Yeah. That's cool. Maybe I'll learn that one day.
Right.
Meanwhile.
Right. Well, that's what I'm in right now. I'm in that world right now. So
I dig on the single that you guys currently have released. I dig, I don't know, maybe it's like 2/3 of the way through, minute left or so, total like shift, kind of like explodes in a different direction. I just think that was really cool. Kind of caught me off guard, and it had a groove to it that was very, to me at least, very different from everything that preceded it in the track. And that stood out to me, so I wanted to give you guys some props for that.
Thank you.
I thought that was really cool.
Thank you.
Was that, so like a change like that or a shift like that in a song, is that dictated by math? Or is that dictated by your guys' feelings?
The symbols I mentioned earlier, they're the 5-sided and the 6-sided one. I wanted to have an interplay with 5s and 6s on that groove. So like, even though it has like a 4 pulse, even though like I'm kind of like playing the kick drum in 4, I'm playing 5 on top of it. And same thing with 6. I'm trying to keep that kind of medium pulse just kind of going along while I keep bouncing back and forth between 5 and 6. The funny thing about that track is Emily Grove did an amazing job at the ending. There's like a vocal choir. She's recorded, I think, 16 times of her voice at the end, which, is awesome. But I didn't hear that until the recording was done. They kept it secret from me. So like when I'm hearing the finished track for the first time, I was like, Ray, these vocal, like, how did you do that?
Doesn't sound like you.
Yeah, he's cracking up. He's like, that's Emily. He's like, we didn't want to tell you about it. So like over the pandemic, I think she was upstairs, Steve Greenwell's studio, did 16 melody tracks of her voice, and we put it on the ending. And it's so appropriate. It's just the best way to end that song.
Shout out to Emily Grove. What's up, Emily? She's gotten a shout out on another episode.
I believe it.
The Glenn Burtnick episode, which y'all should watch as well. It's excellent. What so you're in another band with Emily.
Yes.
Called Daughter Vision. Tell everyone about Daughter Vision. And that music's all released as well. You guys can check out Daughter Vision in addition to Gematria.
Daughter Vision is the creation of my pal, Professor Brian Oblivion, aka Brian Powell. And he approached me years ago with this idea he had for this band. And he kind of hit me at a time when I was not wanting to do anymore. I was already pretty I was playing in 7 bands, it was just like, okay, what else, and he had a demo made, and like I was like, oh yes, we have to do this, so that was the first thing that attracted it to me, but it was his baby first. And like he wanted to collaborate with me because at the time, and there's more now, but this would have been maybe 12 years ago. It's a bit of a blur, but there wasn't at the moment a lot of people doing electronic music. That was the thing. It was like I've always been incorporating electronics with the drums and electronic drums and electronic beats and stuff. And he was getting into electronic music, so it was only natural that he approached me with this, and I loved his demo, and I'm like, yeah, we got to do this band. And then we created like a whole universe around it with different names and like different personas and like
it's theater
story. Yeah, so
it's theater for sure, which is amazing.
Evolved since then.
What are you guys up to these days? Are you still doing it?
This morning I got masters to listen to, so we're doing a single that's done. I just Emily and I are just listening to the different masters, and it's the same guy, Alan Duchess. I hope I'm pronouncing that name right. Who mastered this? Did such a great job with this. Wanted him to master the Daughter Vision track, so we're listening to those right now. So that should be out soon. And we're playing locally. We have a show tomorrow night. It's like.
This will not air
right
in time for that.
Obviously, but yeah.
Where are you playing?
Langosta, and then we have another show at the Saint in September coming up. So, but yeah, like we're pretty active, and there's going to be more Daughter Vision. So, also a band with people that are busy doing all kinds of other things. So it's like when we get together, it's like that's the Daughter Vision world, and who knows is where I was going with that. Who knows what it will be, but
as a guy who you infuse various elements, let's just simply say like electronic and acoustic elements, or electronic and traditional elements, That's a tough leap for a lot of players, bands, artists. They're typically I see people generally working in one or the other. I don't see a ton of integration in the writing stages. In the studio, I think it's easy. If you're with a good producer or a smart engineer, it's kind of easy to experiment there. But what advice would you give players, let's say, who feel like they're stuck with their form and want to infuse anything, be it electronic elements, theatrical elements, visual art, graphic elements? What I just feel like that stands out. When people do it, it stands out. And I don't know why it stands out other than that not a lot of people do it. So why don't they do it?
Well, for me, subjectively, my attention is all over the place. So if like one song is done this way and it's a success, like we wrote a song, I'm probably not going to do it that way again. But advice with maybe incorporating technology and for people who don't use it would be like, if you practice with a metronome, why not practice with a drum machine? Or if you practice or with a sequencer, or like, and if you don't have access to those things, anybody who has an iPhone can just make one, like on their GarageBand app or whatever. But like, I feel like that opens possibilities up, because what you were talking about before, like more machine generated ways of practicing and composing and writing. There's so many ways. And then you have, these guitarists who have the loop pedal is now, now the drummers are using them. And I use sometimes 3 loop pedals, and it's a lot of fun. And, and sometimes when it's wrong, that's when it's the best stuff. So my advice would be to just kind of get out of the, if you don't have to be technically inclined to use a loop pedal or work with a drum machine, and you'll be pleasantly surprised when you come up with something that, you didn't think of, that came out of just noodling around with another machine going.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's some very simple and free things that could be used. I have a metronome app. I forget the name of it. Metronome might even just be the name of the app. It was maybe $1 or $2 a bunch of years ago. And the amount of ideas it's given me.
Yeah.
It only has a limited amount of sounds. A boop, a bip, a boom, or a ch, or a tss,
But that's all you need.
And then you can just set a pattern and then just start fucking around. I'm just going to take that one out. And it forces you to groove a certain way. It forces you to even like hiccups. Sometimes like, well, that's kind of an interesting hiccup. How can we make that not a mistake now?
Right.
And turn it into whoop, whoop, and repeat it at an interval that suddenly that's a thing. Because many of the best players that I've ever seen or talked to, and I've even been in this flow state myself, where you just fucked something up and you hit a nasty note. You're like, no, I'm going to lean into that.
Yeah.
And now bring that as a feature. And suddenly it's like, oh, that was so cool.
Yeah.
Oh, that horrible mistake.
Right.
You got to lean into it sometimes.
The hidden intention.
Yes, the hidden intention. And just the amount of ideas I've gotten from a silly little app, I would definitely encourage people to do that.
I would too.
And then for percussive players to jam over that instead of just a straight metronome like this.
So, and that's another thing, going back to your 4-way coordination question, which I should have. Sometimes if you can record just a part of that rhythm and play against it, that opens up, so many doors there. It helps big time. Yeah,
you realize that cool fill you just had, well, if you just do that at a regular interval, that's its own beat now.
Yes.
And it's something unique and it came from you. What are some good tools? I know we talked about the cheap tools, just apps and all that. What's like some attainable mid-level tools for people to kind of freak out a little bit with loops and beats and drum machines? Like, what are some of the more popular attainable tools?
Well, the Boss Loop Station and a lot of Electro-Harmonix and all these guitar effects companies that make these loop pedals now have like MIDI also with them. So like right now, I'm improvising with a group right now with John Francis, where I've discovered the MIDI lock. It's like I have my loop pedal, and I went downstairs and bought a MIDI cable that, you know, goes into and we can all connect and create. And like you said, someone does a wrong note, it's in there, and it's like, let's use that. So that stuff is, I think, is affordable. I don't think I was able to do that years ago. I forget the company. I want to say it's maybe Teenage Electric. There's like some small things now that used to be computer generated that are now this big that you can use to, you know, do looping and MIDI, and, you know, I think it's way easier now. And especially with everybody doing albums in their room, you know, it's like these are accessible tools, you know.
What about in the drum machine pads? What about in that world? I mean, the SPDSX is that still like king?
Daughter Vision uses that thing. There's a cheaper one-shot version of that now. So I have the SPDS, which you just said, which is like 9 pads. The SPD1 is 1 pad with 12 banks in it, and I think it holds, you know, I'm going to be using it with Gematria, so it holds up a lot of information in it. And the cool thing about it too is there is a separate knob on it for a click, especially if you're playing something as busy as we have. I want to have the click option, and I can determine how loud I want that click in my headphones.
Yeah. So you've been using that as opposed to the larger...
I've been using that lately. Yeah. So, and it's cheaper and it's smaller and it fits in my stick bag. You know, it's like...
Yeah, well...
Yeah.
Carryability.
I was showing...
That's a word is very, very important.
Well, I was showing one of my students a video of a band I was in years ago where the sampler was like, you know, this big, and it needed like 20 minutes just to load. So like we would, and you know, you needed a zip drive and a, you know, like a thing to screw it in, and we would set it up, let it load, set up the rest of the stage, you know, it was still going, you know, and then like you needed something to trigger that, like a keyboard, you know, and it's just, you're carrying all this stuff. And now there's so many of these things now you can just do with your phone, you know? So like my student was cracking up when he saw this video of like all this gear on stage, you know, there's like sampler things you can get now for your phone.
But there's something to how cool something looks too. Like I've seen Radiohead a bunch of times, and I know like someone like Johnny Greenwood, like he doesn't need to have certain things on stage. He could definitely pull certain things off with a simpler setup, but it's like, well, you might as well. You might as well
if you can,
cool stuff that looks interesting and also could go off the rails at any point. I've seen them a bunch of times, and I don't think I've ever seen Radiohead where 1 or 2 songs didn't go off to the rails to the point where they're just like stopped.
Right.
And I think that's charming. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, it's like they're on the edge at all times.
Oh yeah.
And then when it goes off, it's like all hell breaks loose.
Yes.
It's like, oof, no.
I've been there when I was off the rails. It's an experience.
It's cool. I think it's very cool.
It is. But you know, for live purposes, I like to scale down. There's gear I won't bring to a gig. I have like a Moog. It'll never leave my room, you know.
Why? Because it's temperamental, or just because you love it so
I'm just
much?
afraid someone's gonna spill something on it, or you know, who knows? You know,
I was in a hardcore band for many years. As the genre we called it in the early '90s to mid '90s, and we used to play. We played a few like frat parties. Talk about, you know, worrying about someone spilling their drink,
right? Or just jumping into it,
you know, with a keg in their hand. It was like those were like the few shows where you can get away with like literally just punching and kicking people, and they're like, into it. And I'm like, I'm just trying to keep you away from my my very modest pedal board, but I can't buy another flanger.
Right.
Can't buy another flanger pedal. You know, I'm a teenager. I don't have that kind of money.
Right.
I have an SPD SX, and the reason I brought it up is because I think it's an amazing tool, but probably like my own brain, I'm only able to tap into a very small percentage of it and utilize it. Do you have mastery over that tool? Would you say you're like a...
I will tell you that every time, and we just had to load something into it yesterday, I have to take that manual out almost every time.
Damn it.
Yeah.
I'm looking for the guru that
I'm sorry.
that I can
I'm not
shower with like a nice lunch, and then I just ask you a bunch of questions and
certain
you show
gear,
me how to use it.
Certain gear, I like, you know, yes, I could go right to exactly where you need to go, but that one, I you know, because wait, how do I change the start and end point, or like how do I add an effect to? I need the manual for that. I can't, you know. And maybe if I was using it every day, I wouldn't need it. But
so I'd need to propose like not just a lunch, but like a dinner with like a dessert and maybe some drinks. Then you'd take the time.
I would take the time. I'll take the time for you whenever.
I'm gonna hold you. I'm gonna
Absolutely
hold you to that.
Hold me to it.
That's why I'm saying it here.
Hold me to it.
To the internet as well. So when is Nefarious Industries officially releasing the gorgeous vinyl that you showed us?
September 23rd.
Beautiful.
Yes.
And by September 23rd, will all 3 singles be released by then?
Yes.
And then that's also the digital upload for streaming. So the vinyl will be available on September 23rd, day after my wife's birthday.
Nice.
Shout out to Ladybug. Okay, so everything hits on the 23rd. When does the next single? This won't be
at the time of
then.
this interview, Monday. I don't even know what the date is today, but
it's August-ish. Yeah. We're in August.
So number 2 will be out Monday.
That's great.
Yeah.
Any plans? Is this music that you can perform? Can you do shows?
Right now, there's one show in the calendar for September. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the venue. But as of now, we're not doing it as a duo. Rolando Alvarado, I think, is going to be playing bass with us.
I don't know him. Who is this?
He's taught here, and he's one of the musicians who got me into this place.
Oh, very cool.
Fantastic bass player. Yeah, so we're very excited about that.
All right. Well, how can people, other than going on their streaming of choice, Gematria, and checking out the current single, and maybe by the time this releases other singles, where else can people find out information about Gematria?
Other than Spotify, Apple Music, and those, there's a Nefarious website. Gematria is on all the social medias, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, as am I and Ray, and we share all this stuff. Nefarious has been great about promoting it. So even if you just Google Gematria, there's a few different publications promoting this. So that's
maybe folks at Nefarious Industries. You could also post this web episode
for sure
of Through the Glass on your channels. That would be nice. Steve Honoshowsky, I want to thank you for coming on the show. You're a cool dude. You're a creative
You're a cool
guy.
dude.
Thanks, man. I'm I'd say 2/3 of the time I am.
Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
This was very nice. Shout out to Ray Suhy as well, Steve's partner in Gematria, and all the folks in Daughter Vision as well. Steve, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Thank you. Please check out our other episodes. Tell a friend. Even if you don't like it, tell them you don't like it. Have a great day. Goodbye.